So, black and white thinking pattern. It is a common and pervasive thinking pattern in people who grew up around anxious, controlling, and critical parents, who are afraid of making mistakes themselves, who strive for perfectionism, who have rigid black and white thinkings, who often think they are on moral high ground, judging others, and with this sense of self-righteousness. What would we do as children? We take all those messages in indiscriminately, and we copy and learn from their behaviors consciously and unconsciously. Do any of those phrases sound familiar to you? You always do this. This is so typical of you. You always let me down. You never learn. Now, pay attention to those words. Always, never, impossible, should, perfect, failure. All of those words indicate a rigid black and white thinking. There's no gray zone in between, right? We go to two extremes. And gradually it becomes how we view ourselves. Those external voices from our parents, from them judging others, from them criticizing us, become our internalized self-critic. It sounds like, I'm such a failure. I always screw up. My life is doomed. People always leave me. Then it will get extended to how we view others. Like we either completely idealize them. We think they're perfect, they're glowing, we put them on a pedestal. Or we just completely trash them, like devalue them, like they're worthless. We also have this very rigid rules about how people should behave around us. Like, you're either with me or against me. You're this villain, you're the bad one. I'm the victim. Or, you're vulnerable, you're helpless. I am superior. I am powerful. The official term is splitting. It means that as children, we fail to develop this ability to integrate bad sides and good sides of ourselves, and bad sides and good sides of the caregivers and the world. So we tend to lack this ability to view things in a middle ground, to mentalize, to take more factors into account. For example, making a joke about Asian stereotype. If a child goes home with a test score of A, the parent be like, well, it's average, and B means below average. So they don't really genuinely care about, well, how much effort you put inside. They don't care about how much obstacles you have to overcome and how much improvements you've made. They just want a definite answer about, if you're good or bad. They don't really care about the process. If you're like me, if you have emotionally immature parents, then their truth, their lives, their rules become ours. It becomes a model, it becomes a universal rules that we cannot afford to doubt or disobey, because we hang around them all the time. We have little reference outside of home, right? Simultaneously, if you grew up in an environment that is not stable or even very chaotic, then it becomes our compulsive drive to look for a definitive answer. We need to put a definition to it. It's good or bad. We need to do risk assessment because we need to figure out what can we do to keep ourselves safe, to survive. The problem with black and white thinking is that it locks us in only two possibilities, like two extremes. As a result of it, our view gets distorted and our actions could be swinging between extremes as well. We can't see our human sides. We can't see ourselves with both flaws and good intentions. We can't see our struggles anymore. We can't see our stubbornness to keep going. With this rigid thinking style, we fail to see our growth, our healing as a linear one instead of a straight line. We cannot see relationships with ups and downs, with ruptures and repairs at the same time. Also, we tend to see people as objects because we grade them with strict standards, right? And all of this pattern have been perpetuated itself without our consciousness. It can cause us to have even a lower self-esteem, because for people with complex PTSD, we often have this deep embedded shame within us, right? Any negative trace could enhance our already negative self-talk, self-perception. We believe that, wow, we're screwed, we're definitely flawed, that is why people always leave me. I'm so bad, my life is screwed. Black and white thinking pattern can make our relationship unstable because we have this unstable sense of self and mood swings along with unstable view of other people. All of this lead to chaotic relationships full of intensity and instability. A tiny bit trace of your partner being a little bit more distant could lead us to conclude that, Well, I knew this. You're trouble. I knew it. You never loved me. You're such a liar. It also makes us overreact to any kind of perceived criticism or even constructive criticism, right? Because we view it as a confirmation that we're bad. This kind of hypersensitivity is detrimental to our career because it lets us fall into the pitfalls of half-ass anything just because of the slightest setback or constructive criticism. Instead of viewing it as, well, the way I tried it probably won't work, let me learn and try something else, like an average person. People with complex PTSD often tend to go the self-sabotaging side, like, I knew this won't work, I'm such a failure, I'm doomed. So how to overcome? I have 4 tips for you. Tip number 1, I have a book recommendation that is Feeling Good by David Burns. This book was a lifesaver for many times in my life where I question my life, where I get into depression or anxiety just because I have those false perceptions, black and white thinking, cognitive distortions. It put me out of so many emotional storms that I got myself trapped in the thought that I have no future. I'll have no relationships. I'm gonna end up alone by myself. In his opinion, all of these cognitive distortions are the ones to blame for our depression and anxiety and mood swings that we couldn't save ourselves from. He talked about all of those cognitive errors in details, and most importantly, it has so many resources and exercises you can do by yourself to catch yourself, to pull yourself out of this thinking storm. The second one is to coming up with alternative explanations. One major progress you can make in healing is to be able to view things from multiple angles. And I've learned it the hard way because I couldn't remember how many therapy sessions I spent just arguing over the facts with my therapist. I always perceive it this way, but she would offer me multiple alternatives and I would refute all of them because I just stubbornly stick to my original theory. But now when I take a back step, I will discover that, well, it's because of trauma. It's not the reality. Admit that there are so many things we don't know. We're only seeing it most likely from our trauma perspective, right? From our trapped negative experience. We're not viewing things comprehensively from every angle possible. This is also a very self-regulating skill you need to cultivate in terms of relying on yourself to regulate yourself instead of always clinging to others, looking for answers outside to soothe your anxiety. And third one is that incorporate other people's opinions. Find yourself some trusted friend, someone you believe you count on, can give you an objective answer instead of pleasing you, instead of shaming you. Don't do that, it makes you feel worse. So I often have 1 or 2 best friends who I trust is emotionally stable enough to offer me honest opinions. And I always go to them, am I overreacting? Do you think there might be other explanations? And I genuinely let myself trust their judgments at the time when I get activated, at the time when I get triggered, because I know when I'm living in trauma time, I couldn't trust myself. So that is something I often do when I couldn't have access to my therapist. I go to my friends. You'll be shocked at how much time you're actually coming from a place of trauma when interacting with the world. And the last one is to practice great thinking. This means try to avoid overgeneralization and use descriptive words just to tell the truth, tell the fact, not those emotional facts you believe something to be. Those are some examples. Switch out, my boyfriend always forgets to call. Guess his work is more important than me. 2, last Thursday, I noticed my partner didn't call me back. Switch out, my boss is not satisfied with me. I'm getting fired. With, my boss gave me 2 pieces of feedback last week. Instead of saying that my day is completely screwed by the rain, it's a bad sign. Be specific. Like, when I was late to an appointment because of the traffic caused by the rain, I felt upset because I was worried that my client would have a bad impression of me. If you're interested in learning about weekend triggers for anxiety and depression, I'm gonna put my video up here. I'll see you next time. Bye bye.